Holy sh! What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bourbon of the Week. My name's Chris. I'm going to be your host for today, and thanks to Adam Sampler in my Discord. Check out the Discord link in the description below. We have a sample of William Larue Weller 2023. Now, I've had my stags of the world. I own a 10-year Pappy Van Winkle. You might not call it Pappy. I call it Pappy. I've tried the Lot B 12-year. I've tried a 15-year. I've never had a George T. Stag, and I've never had a William Larue Weller, so this is our first opportunity to try anything like that. Now, obviously, we're only looking at a 1 ounce sample of this, but this is more than generous of him to send me this. I cannot believe I'm going to try this for the first time. We're, of course, going to put it through the gauntlet. Price, taste, drinkability. Let's pour it up. I mean, it looks beautiful. This is one of those things I don't normally do a nosing, but we're going to nose this. I feel like there's going to be such a fragrant nose on this. I have to at least check this out. Then we'll talk about this bottle. We'll put it through price, taste, drinkability, and we'll see where it lands on the list. First of all, I know this has been in a sample bottle for a little bit now, but no chance I'm nosing this at 133.6 proof. I mean, I could take a full inhale of this, and I don't get a runny nose. I don't get the eyes watering, nothing. That's absolutely crazy to me. I think drinkability on this is going to be phenomenal, but there's only one way to find out. Everybody knows. Time for the traditional sip. Cheers, y'all. Holy sh! Got to apologize if I keep looking to my left over here. The Flyers are on right now, and they're trying to blow a playoff push. I got to tell you, Washington's right behind us here. We're about to be outside of the top 3 in the Metro. It's a whole thing going on over here, and now we're losing to the Canadiens. It's a wild night. This right here, though, let's talk about this. 133.6. There's no way in hell you could tell me that this is 133.6 proof. I don't even believe he sent me the right stuff. First glass of whiskey for the night, it usually hits you a little bit harder. Not here, not this one. This is just crazy to me. I've had stags at 133, 136.4 proof. Stag usually drinks a little bit hot, or at least near its proof, but this right here, nowhere near that. I've got to tell you, I don't have a lot to work off of here, so we're going to go with what we have. 133.6 proof when we're talking about drinkability on this. This high 8s. Again, I do want it to be hard to get 9s this year. I don't know, though. This might break the 9s when it comes to drinkability. Now, this is their wheat and mash bill. There's no rye on this. It's about 15% wheat from everything that I've read before. It is a little bit spicy. You do get a little bit of spice, but none of that is ethanol spice. I wasn't really expecting some of the spices that I'm actually getting on this, but none of it is ethanol spice. 133.6 proof. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go 9 even. Just to not go too far over those 9s there, but I'm going to go 9.00 even on this. I think this is phenomenal when it comes to drinkability. Now, of course, up next, we're going to get the taste on this. And before we tell you about the taste on this, 12 years, 6 months for the age statement on this. We already told you about the 15% wheat mash bill, and everything about that works. Everybody who knows me knows I love that 12-year age statement. Now, let me talk about the nose on this. I said the word mocha in my head immediately when I sniffed this. I used to play football. I know it doesn't look like it. I didn't play very well into my later years of life, but when I was younger and I was the same size as everybody else, I played football. I was the best cornerback in the King of Prussia Indians. That being said, it would get cold during football season. I wasn't really a coffee guy. For some reason, my parents one day brought me a Frappuccino or like a mocha latte or something like that. It wasn't iced, obviously, it was warm, but it's very sweet, very chocolatey, very mocha-y. This kind of reminds me of that flavor profile off of the nose. Taste-wise, it's right there as well. I feel like I get some chocolate. I feel like I get some mocha. I feel like I get a little bit of age behind it with that oak. And for some reason, with this particular glass, it is working perfectly. I love whatever's going on here. Now, I always had a sweet tooth when I was younger, and I kind of fell off that as I got older, probably because I worked at an ice cream store for so long, and I just don't like the ice cream and the water ice anymore. I've eaten too much of it over the years. That being said, when it comes to my whiskey, I still have a very good sweet tooth. But for this particular glass, it starts off super sweet, that chocolatey, that mocha, which I normally get on the end of a glass like this. But in the middle, there's some spice on this, but it's not that rye spice. It's like clove, cinnamon, but there's some really good spice on this, and I talk about it all the time, and I'm going to say it again. That roller coaster ride, this is one of the best roller coaster rides I've ever had. Sweet, spicy, back to sweet, 12-year age statement, bringing it in, rounding it out with some oak on the end of this, a little bit of dryness, a little bit of tannins, but not too much, just a tad on the back of the tongue. I mean, I don't know if I can talk any more highly about this glass. I don't want to get too excited. I do think I'm putting the name behind this. I have high expectations. I've had high expectations of bottles in the past, and they've let me down. And I feel like the letdown is just as much as the build up. Right here, I built this up in my mind, and I feel like it's living up to expectations. So I don't want to just think, okay, it's living up to expectations. It's William Larue Weller, so it should be the best. I do think that this is a very, very good pour. The question is, I'm trying to compare it in my mind to other pours, and I don't think it's like crazy exceptionally better, right? I don't think there's anything about this that stands out as some bourbons do where I drink them and I say to myself, like, that's super special. I do think this is one of the better bourbons that I had, but I don't think it is like crazy exceptional, above and beyond something I wasn't expecting. So for that, I'm still going to go high 8s, don't get me wrong. But if this was something that like blew me out of the water, I would go 9s. But I'm going to go like 8.86 when it comes to taste on this. It's damn good, I got to tell you. And last but not least, the hard part where you guys yell at me, we've got to go over price on this. And the price on this bottle is $125 MSRP. And Chris, you're an idiot. You can never find this for $125 MSRP. It was actually on the PA lottery at $124.99. And if you won the PA lottery, you bought this at $125 MSRP. I understand that you can probably not find it for that. Some people get lucky. Some people have relationships. Some people win the lottery. You're not finding it on the secondary market. But if I compared everything to everything else when it came to secondary value, we would never have a bottle under like $500-$600 when it came to any of these BTAC or anything like that. That being said, $125, I mean, think about it this way. If this bottle was on the shelf all the time, right, you could pick this up whenever you want it, take the hype, take the name, take all of that away. If it tasted this good and you could get it for $125, it would be a daily drinker. There's no reason you wouldn't put it on the shelf, which is why these go for so much on secondary. But $125 is just, it seems crazy undervalued for me, even at that price point. We talk all the time about these distilleries probably trying to combat some of the secondary market when they're coming out with some of these newer releases, right? We see bottles coming out at $150, $200 that aren't going for too much more on the secondary market. And you're like, damn, $200 is a lot. But if you wanted it before, you had to pay $300 or $350 on the secondary or double MSRP. So they're like, hey, we're going to get our piece of the bread. And it doesn't seem like, as much as everybody talks crap on Buffalo Trace and their marketing and supply and demand and whatever it may happen to be, to get all of their bottles to be so sought after, so highly sought after. Whatever they're doing, they're keeping these bottles at a reasonable price point. Just because you can't find them at that is not their fault. Now, we could talk about supply and demand and that issue all you want, but this bottle at $125 is a steal. High 8s again, 8.73 when it comes to drinkability on this. Scratch that, I meant price, not drinkability. You know what I meant. But listen, we're going to save this last little sip as we send it over to our Bourbon Bomb of the Week and learn a little bit more about William Larue Weller and the glass bottles that he kind of, I wouldn't say introduced to the industry, but definitely took hold of for himself. Flyers down 2-0 after 2. Hopefully Washington's still losing, because if they're not, they're going to be ahead of us and we're going to be on the outside looking in. That being said, if you've been in the whiskey world for any amount of time, you probably know all about William Larue Weller, the Weller lineup, all of the Wellers that people chase. That being said, he basically pioneered wheat whiskey, wheat as the secondary grain, obviously, which is what they use in this. But another thing that he kind of pioneered, it wasn't him using it first, but it came to glass bottles as shipping. So before this, they used barrels, they used jugs. Those jugs are like those old XXX things that you would see on cartoons and stuff that people would carry around. And those jugs were made of ceramic or stone, so they were super heavy. They carried multiple gallons, so they were bigger. Obviously, if you're using something like barrels, you're shipping by the 53. I'm sure they had smaller barrels at the time, 53 gallons that is. But if you're shipping in that big of a quantity, it's hard for individuals to get their hands on stuff like this. Glass bottles was the obvious answer. You could seal them, you could make them dark so they still stayed out of the sun and didn't evaporate quite as quickly as something like a barrel or a jug. And obviously, they're easier to transport. Not only that, there was one other big benefit that people didn't know about. A major problem at the time was branding. So a lot of people would buy whiskey, and if it didn't have a label on it or didn't have a name on it, they could just put it in their own container and put their own name on it. But when it came to glass bottles, that'd be a lot of different brands to change. So William Larue Weller could put his own brand, his own label on the front of all of these glass bottles, so you knew if you were getting this bottle that it was, in fact, coming from William Larue Weller. And I thought that was pretty cool. Obviously, it would last a little bit longer in a glass bottle as well, less evaporation, you can make it a darker color, and maybe the sun wouldn't hit it quite as much. But something I didn't know about William Larue Weller going into tonight, and I hope that's something you learned as well. Let's finish this off and let's give you a score with this fantastic bottle of whiskey. Well, sample. I gotta say, I love when this happens. This bottle came in at an 8.86, which was one of our scores. We had 9, 8.86, and 8.73, and that's right in the middle, and I didn't even know that going into my scoring tonight. That's pretty cool. 8.86 is a fantastic spot, especially on today's scale. Don't go back and look at my other videos and be like, oh, he put this bottle at a 9.24. I was just throwing out scores at that point. I do think I was a little bit high on some of these bottles, and I started to recognize I was losing that ceiling, right? Which is, I toned it down a little bit. Once you start putting everything in the high 8s, low 9s, it starts to become watered down, and you can't compare bottles that are 9s to 8s and all that. This deserves to be up there in the high 8s. So far, we have some bottles that are like 7s on this list. We have bottles that are 6s, some bottles that you've probably heard about that deserve to be in the 5s. But as we get further and further into 2024, you're going to recognize how good of a bottle this is at an 8.86. Let's finish it off. There's like the tiniest drop left in this, and I'm truly going to savor every single drop that comes out of this glass. And I have one person to thank for that, and that's Adam Sampler. He found me on Discord. You can find me on there as well. Check us out. Our link in the description below. Click that like and subscribe button here on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram, Patreon. Both those links in the description below as well. Please don't drink and drive. Always drink responsibly, and stay healthy, stay happy. Stay looking for BTAC at a reasonable price. Seems worth it. Cheers, y'all. Damn, that's good.